what the person has come to you for advice for is they want to know how to move forward. So they want to know whether they can, whether they can move forward with a clinical trial, whether they can, market this medical device, whether it's ready, whether it meets the standards and the regulations. Yep. And they don't really care about what the law says or what you studied in law school. And so flipping that mindset and saying, okay, what is this person actually trying to achieve and how can I get them there faster? That is, in my view and in the view of, the view that we have in the firm and in my team, that's exactly what legal advice really should be. And I said in the beginning that this is especially true about privacy, because if you look, for example, at legislation like GDPR, like the CCPA in the UK, and like other legislation that's coming out now, it's a lot of it isn't black and white. It's a lot of it is, take into account what the individual expects you to do with their data, what's fair and transparent, and these concepts that you need to actually, as a legal advisor, as a privacy professional, take and translate into a specific situation. So, for example, I had someone come to me, the other day and say, what does the law say? Can I do X? Yes or no? And that's all they want to know. Well, guess what? The law doesn't say, yes, you can do this. No, you can't do that. Right? And so that's where this understanding of trying to get people to the outcome that they want to get to and trying to get them the answer and allow them to move forward, that's where this kind of mindset is extremely powerful, and I think is the correct way and the appropriate way to give legal advice. It's really the only way.
The way I frame the answer to that question, I've been asked that, and it's going to echo exactly what you just said, which is I personally try to go from can I do X, Y, Z to how do I do X, Y, or Z, and that addition helps me at least rethink the question. But thank you, because that's a question that when I've been general counsel, I've seen that issue pop up enough times where you're going, this is all great information, but how does this impact what I do on a day-to-day basis? So let me ask you a different version of the question. You talked about how you have a really strong corporate and commercial background, and that's impacting your knowledge and your experience as a privacy attorney. My question to you is, when you're talking about companies of varying sizes, whether you're talking about a small emerging biotech, you're talking about a global, small emerging biotech of, say, initially funded $3 to $5 million, or a medium-sized generic company, say anywhere from $150 to $200 million in revenue, to a large pharma company, which is multi-billion dollars in revenue. How do you advise them differently when you're talking about the types of privacy considerations they should have? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. When I advise them, what I worry about is, can you handle it? But but the rules don't change necessarily. So how do you play that out?
Yeah, it's a conversation. I mean, you really kind of hit the nail on the head with that one, because it's a conversation that I have on a daily basis. As you know, and your listeners may know, Israel has been dubbed the startup nation, right? I think we have more startups. We have the most startups per capita in the world, if not just second to Silicon Valley. But a ton of startups. And what that means is that, startups, obviously, one of the things they care about the most when they're building their product is that their product is compliant with the technological, whatever laws apply to that technology, which most often is privacy legislation. And as you rightly said, the privacy laws don't distinguish between, or at least I should say the European privacy laws, because CCPA, for example, does have certain thresholds which then apply certain responsibilities and liability. But at least in GDPR, the minute you're collecting information, any type of personal information, and personal information is a very, very broad definition, right? So the minute you're collecting any type of personal information, the law applies to you from A to, well, you said Z because I'm an English lawyer, I'm going to say Z, but from A to Z, right? All the way through. My parents will have to forgive me for that one. But so they apply completely, and it's true, and it's a big pain point for companies because often this stuff can be very expensive to implement and a real pain when you're trying to build a small company. And so the way that I approach it with my clients is, I use one word: risk. Okay, what is the biggest risk for your company? So when you're talking about companies in the life sciences, people who are collecting health information. So let's say you have a startup that's that's starting to that's developing a product that is in the health tech sphere, right? They're developing a software product in the health tech sphere. So so in the beginning, the questions that I would ask them, for example, are, okay, so you haven't gone to market yet, right? So you're not collecting the information yet. So the risk isn't there at the beginning, but let's look at, when you do go to market, what information will you be collecting and how can you design your product from day one to be compliant with, when you launch the product and when you do it. And that's the concept that we call it, in the privacy lingo, we call it privacy by design, right? You're designing your product in order to be privacy compliant from day one. And so, I often go through those exercises with companies. And then if you're talking about a mid-cap company, a mid-sized company, like you said, oftentimes it'll be about putting in place the processes and procedures. So they've come out of this small startup phase where everyone was running around doing everything, right? The CEO was on the line doing sales and was also doing the marketing. They were everyone was doing everything, and there were no processes, and it was just like, we need to survive, right? Yeah. So you move out of that mode, and then you become a viable company. You may have gotten an investment from a serious investor, and people are starting to say, okay, what have you put in place in terms of processes and procedures to make sure that you guys will be, continue on the journey in a compliant manner. So then you start looking at things like internal privacy policies and processes to evaluate new technologies or new features to your technology, or if it's a company that's going to a clinical trial, you might have some work around doing something like that. But then it really becomes about laying the foundations for that. To build a building, you need to obviously lay the foundation. Right. And then I also have very, very, very large clients, and the challenge there from a privacy perspective is very interesting in the sense that then it becomes an issue of making sure that everyone knows what the other person is doing. So you have the small startup where everyone's doing everything, and then you have the large, enterprise corporate that with, thousands of employees, and you could have a department that's just completely oblivious to the fact that you've put in place this new policy, and they're just kind of off doing their own thing. And because they're so big, they're not necessarily talking to each other. So then it becomes another challenge of kind of training, monitoring, making sure that, the different parts of the organization speak to each other. So, as you said, the different sizes of corporate kind of pose different risks or different challenges from a privacy perspective and need to be treated a little bit differently. But in the end, it's all about getting to that cohesion and making sure that everyone's kind of following what you set from the top.